I would say that it's not that far of a stretch to say that for some time now, Star Wars events and some quests just haven't been hitting quite the same. I mean, how do we go from this to this? Or this to this? And I don't think I'm the only person feeling that way either. I've seen quite a handful of posts criticizing the game's current state, events, and story, and rightfully so in my opinion. But what really made me start thinking about this was seeing what Hoyo was doing with its other games. Like, I go to Genshin and play the Summer Fontinalia event, which had fun gameplay and a fantastic story regarding Sandrone, her relationship with Alen, Columbina, and herself. 10 out of 10. But then, I go back to Star Rail, and I'm greeted with Anti-Graft Breakbuster. Like, I genuinely have to slam someone now for this. Okay, not the most fair comparison. Yes, we actually just got a Fate event, which was also 10 out of 10, but my point still stands. So for today, I want to go over my interpretation of what exactly happened with Star Rail's story and events, which I think has led to a lot of people feeling dissatisfied. Trust me, it's all connected. Now, feel free to disagree or give your own take on the matter, but without a further ado, let's get right into it. And I think the easiest place to start would be the events themselves. We just got 3 back-to-back stinkers of events, which I know a lot of people were upset about. Pixel Plane, Wispay Amusement Park, like come on. However, we're actually not going to start there. Or more accurately, we can't start with the events, because that's actually not where the root of the issue is coming from. In fact, I think the events are just a symptom of another issue, that being Star Rail's main story. Think about it, what were generally the favorited patches of each version? With 1.x, there's 1.0, 1.4, and 1.5. Penacony, 2.1, 2.2, 2.5, and Euphorius, 3.3, 3.4. Now of course, everyone's favorite will be a bit different, but using the ones I've selected, there's something really interesting about all these patches. All of them are recognizable from their banners alone, and for many of these, I can't even remember what events were held at the time. Yet even so, they've somehow become some of our favorite patches. And that's because the thing that made these patches so memorable wasn't necessarily the event, but the overall story around it. There were things in these patches that made people care. Basically, if the main story is good, then the entire patch probably feels good too, even if the events were just okay. As such, if the main story was mediocre, then a lot of the heavy lifting would fall onto the events. So, with 4.0 and 4.1 having mediocre stories, they had to rely on the events to carry. And those events were the Cosmicon Collective in 4.0 and Wispay War Saga in 4.1. And while they were pretty fun, they definitely weren't no Arm Alley or Ghost Hunt. So what exactly happened to our story to make it even need a good event in the first place? Well, looking at Plain Arcadia, it's been a mixed reception to say the least, with it not quite living up to their predecessors. And this is a pretty big clue on what's currently going on. But before we analyze Plain Arcadia, we need to establish this idea. Not every patch can be a banger. And it's because of the idea of setup and payoff. We cannot have a cohesive story if it's just climax after climax. In any story, we need to establish the world, its characters, and conflicts. And the only way to do so is via exposition. And this is usually done in the 0.0 or 1 patches, which are often a bit slower, which is completely fine. The problem is when the patches only set up. Even if we're trying to build towards something bigger, they should still be satisfying stories on their own, to where we can say, now that was a good story, such as Adventuring in 2.1. As for some more examples, 2.0 gave us a lot of exposition, but even while doing so, we run into death and find ourselves in a murder mystery with Firefly and Robin. Even though 2.0 was busy setting up the world and 2.1, we still had a satisfying and conclusive mini-story. In 3.0, there was a lot of exposition, but this time we got dropped off in the middle of a war and got a pretty satisfying resolution with the defeat of Nikodor. In 4.0 though, we defeated Sparksy, who was trying to make everyone her follower. Oh no, so scary! In 4.1, we defeated some Power Rangers. Yeah, these two patches basically sacrificed themselves for the later versions. As such, a lot of us just weren't too invested in the story. Now, it's one thing to just have a patch just be there for setup. It's another when there's multiple of them in a row. With 4.0, it established the world and sets up for Foolish. Weak story. 4.1 sets up for Foolish and Veracity with, again, weak story. Now 4.2 is tied for being the best patch in my opinion, finally giving us the payoff of Foolish and now also setting up for Asat Pramad. By the way, Foolish is probably the best character written so far in Plain Arcadia, so props to them. 4.3 however was solely a setup patch for Asat Pramad. While it was nice learning about Blade and Graphia, the core focus was actually Himiko trying to expose Asat Pramad, which had no resolution as that was saved for 4.4. This combined with the fact that we were compensated with Pixel Plane and Wispay Amusement Park, 4.3 was definitely the stinkiest of the bunch in terms of story. And thus that leaves us 4.4, which was actually a really interesting and divisive one. Finally, another payoff patch. But was it worth it? Now, from a storytelling perspective, it was fantastic. We finally got the resolution between Asat Pramad and Himiko, and we get to learn the truth behind Himiko and Asat Pramad being en route and icy. Not to mention the crazy lore drops tied behind RMG, where he either vague posts or drops the nukes. Yeah, you gotta go to YouTube for the full context. Now, even so, this is also the time when Starro got this nickname, Honkai No Stakes Rail, which I find to be super interesting. Clearly, people did not like the payoff. Now, we've already gone over how too much setup can hurt the story, but what about a quote-unquote weak payoff? Now, to sum up the criticism, it goes something like this. Something something death bait, something something power friendship is BS, something something. However, it's because of these criticisms that I think that Hoyo did a fantastic job with the story. It's literally gonna be the biggest bait and switch we're gonna experience. In 4.4, the Astral Express has lost. Yes, we lost to Asat Pramad, which I think is dope, even though we quote-unquote beat him. While he lost the battle, I'm pretty sure he won the war. Now, in 4.4, most of us were probably distracted with the outsmarting between Asat and Himiko. Something like this. I've outsmarted you because I know you're a fake. Well, I've outsmarted you because I'm not the fake, and I've also found your weakness. Well, actually, I've outsmarted your outsmarting because y'all walked right into your deaths because I'm still OP as hell. Well, I've outsmarted your outsmarting which outsmarted my outsmarting with the power of friendship and the Stellaron. But it actually doesn't end right there like what many people believe right now. Because, joke's on you, that was my plan the entire time. The second we used the Stellaron, we fell right into his hands. And this was hinted at multiple times if you paid attention. The first is when he literally says to Himiko,
"You are not my target. They are not my target. Shall I officially announce my plan? In the name of Terminus, her journey ends here."
The second is when we ask him how to defeat him, and he just says to use the Stellaron. And he says that again when coding us to using it during the fight. And then, when we meet our supposed future self, they literally say,
"I made the same choice once, and lost everything because of it." but you have to get used to loss before you can move on.
And finally, when Assad says, your actions are really gonna have some negative consequences in the future, to where we respond, no, I'm better. So, as you can see, the implications for this are crazy. I just hope that Hoyo delivers with the promise and everyone gets nuked or something. Or just well dies, that's fine too. So as for 4.4, it had a very strong story, sets up for the future, and also had a fantastic event with Fate, which I'll get to later. All's to say, we can still get patches with both strong stories and events, like with 4.4. And it's also fine if we get patches with only a good main story. However, it becomes an issue when both story and event are dookie like 4.3. So if Hoyo can just make more satisfying self-contained stories within the patch itself, or I guess just make better events, then we'll be in a pretty good spot. Playing for the long game is fine, but at least throw us a bone in the meantime. So now that we know all that, the other question that arises is, what actually makes a story good or memorable? And that's where we get to the second idea, plot versus character-driven stories. As the name suggests, one focuses on the characters and the other needs to push forward the story. With that in mind, let's actually go back to those patches that people liked. And there's a pretty interesting pattern here. A lot of these memorable patches were heavily character-driven. Now obviously, they still need to move the overarching story forward. However, a lot of the focus was placed onto the characters themselves, as opposed to the events surrounding them. Let's take a look at 3.4, the final patch, and arguably one of the greatest moments in Star Rail history. But looking at said patch, we spend half the story exploring Finon's background, motivations, and struggles, and the other half experiencing his depression alongside him whilst killing all of our friends. And that is exactly what we like, not the friend killing part. We like understanding our characters and their motivations. Who knew? We like learning about our characters that we paid for instead of themes and such. And that's something I think Star Rail can do really well. However, not every character is able to get this special treatment. Some units are bound to get shafted, as we can't always dedicate an entire patch to explore just one or two units while somehow moving the bigger story. It's just not possible.
Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
And that's where we get to Planar Arcadia's problem. Because compared to the previous regions, Planar Arcadia has leaned a lot more towards a plot-driven story. We're constantly shifting major plot points and characters to where we literally don't get time to breathe or develop the characters. If I had to point to the characters which did get this special treatment, I'd say they have to be Fulwish, Himiko, and Asap Pramod, all of which I assume were pretty well received. And interestingly enough, they were also all of the major characters in the Payoff patches, which I mentioned earlier. And it's not just a coincidence. With all of these patches, we finally stop setting up the story and actually get to spend time getting to know the people that are in it. As such, these more emotion-filled stories will resonate and stick with us. But for everyone else, good luck with that. Let's use Asheville as a prime example. Now, this guy was being foreshadowed all the way back in Penacony as this big shot Galaxy Ranger. So when 4.1 dropped and we got his story, I was expecting some crazy Galaxy Ranger shenanigans, but instead, we just got our friendly neighborhood detective plus one aura moment. And then, I was just sitting there thinking, wait, that's it? He was like a passenger in his own story. And that's also the frustrating part, because it feels like we're not using these characters to their full potential. As such, I was left unfulfilled because the story just didn't have time for it. Now, you don't always need a dedicated patch for a unit to really feel for them. All it takes is just one moment. Like Casper was more memorable than some of the main cast in my opinion. Now, I don't know if y'all remembered him, but hearing his euphemism about the Cinder Age where all his friends died actually made me kinda sad. Here, take a listen.
Only a second had passed. She held me and cried, saying, "I'm sorry. And you've done well." Over and over. It was just one lost game. We could have just won it back some other time, but... Why are you saying that too?
Hell, I still remember back in 3.1 when we were consoling the families. Nobody's in the grand scheme of things, yet I still remembered them. Primarily Titus and his dad.
I already got him a retirement home and was waiting for him to come around. All my effort is wasted now, and he didn't even give me a chance to say goodbye.
But even with these, it's only possible if the plot allows it. Like if you throw in an emotional moment out of nowhere, it can giga ruin the flow of the story. And a perfect example of this is when we first got teleported to the Herald of Death classroom. Instead of intrigue or empathy towards Himiko, I'm like, what the actual fire hazard just happened? So, if the main story isn't always a good place to explore our characters, then where the hell are we supposed to get these smaller character moments? Wait a minute, isn't there literally a perfect device that can be used to develop our characters and give us more stories that aren't limited by the main quest, which also gives us rewards too? Oh, that's right, companion missions! Oh, wait, never mind, those don't exist anymore. Sorry, I meant events. You know, the things that we started this entire video talking about? Yeah, we finally looped it all the way back. Now, to put it bluntly, please, Hoyo, I need this! My Evanescence is kinda homeless. I'm living with my dad, I would want to help her out.
Dude, I'm watching the stream while you try not to laugh, bro. That's disrespectful, bro. What's wrong with you, bro?
Okay, but seriously, events are the perfect place to explore our characters. I mean, some of the most successful patches were just events which focused on our characters. Think about Aurum Alley, Ghost Hunt, and now the Second Fate collab. With all that said, if these events are supposed to help fill these gaps left by the main story, then what exactly should they do to be good? Well, thankfully, I just got a checklist of 3 things. First, please focus on the characters you guys spent so long developing. It's really cool when we see funny or cool interactions with the other cast members, which really expand the world. Let's take a look at the Second Fate collab, the first proper event in 2 entire years. Yes, years. The last one was literally the Luminary War Dance back in 2024. Now, I can actually excuse this because Inforius was its own entire thing. Anyways, the Fate collab though was delicious. Mr. N got nuked by Ratio, Castrus got kidnapped by Sparksy, which a lot of people enjoyed, and this brought about hella memes and yummy animations. And of course, my goat Castrus, bonding with her sister and giving us one hell of heartfelt goodbye to Rin. And also, knowing Castrus and Finan are going to spend the next few weeks telling stories to the rest of the Inforius cast about the real world just has me kicking my feet in the air. Anyways, as for the second thing, just some decent gameplay. Ones where we actually gotta at least think a little and press a few buttons. Now these auto battlers or AFK games, they just aren't to people's tastes. And lastly, my third point, which I don't really see people talking about. And honestly, it's probably the biggest thing. I really want to get voice acting for more of these events. Just take a look at this. And now for this one. Yeah, I just removed the audio because it's pretty much what happens for a lot of the events. As you can see, a completely different experience. Remember back in 2. and 3.x when the voice actor strike was going on? Yeah, not fun for anyone. Now, this event also really did Sparksy justice in my opinion. Now, she has been known as just that annoying streamer, but after this event, I now see her as a very cunning schemer who is willing to do whatever it takes to get what she wants. And at the same time, I also felt really bad for her because she also got a lot of shit during the story. Like, look.
たわけ貴様誰の許しを得て口を開いているこの特産ウサギ頭め
そこの不審人者はそうねあの派手な服をひんむいて供物代わりに没収しようかしら
But yeah, it was really enjoyable seeing more of the cast such as Sparksy, Ratio, and even Tiny Herda. Okay, but finally moving on, I want to say that older events, when you actually go back and watch them, they weren't all that good story-wise or gameplay. Yet even so, we still really like them. Though I can't really describe it, you can just feel the heart behind those events, which I believe the same can be said for the Fate collab. And I really hope to see more stuff like this. And with 4.5 coming out pretty close to when this video will be dropped, I really hope this quote-unquote filler patch will get ourselves another RM Alley to experience. And yeah, that's kind of the entire video. There was a lot of setup, and hopefully y'all were satisfied with the payoff. Now, I spent the last few weeks on this video at this point, because this type of stuff is actually really hard to make. There's just so many ideas that you just don't know where to start. So if y'all enjoyed this or want to see me break down more stuff besides meta or talk about community issues, a like or sub would be a pretty big indicator. Now, I do have two more things I want to mention which I couldn't fit in the video. That being one, I hope we can get more memeable moments like with casters, because the memes are the DNA of the soul and also heart of the community. But also, I don't like getting mocked by Genshin and Zenless in this department, okay? And second, even better animations would be nice. Now, Fate's done a pretty good job showing how it's improving in this department, but hopefully one day it'll be at Genshin or Zenless' level. Now, Star Rail doesn't have amazing exploration or an expansive world like Genshin, nor the technical prowess like Zenless. However, with Star Rail, we've always had the best quality of life and characters, so I hope we can really play into our strengths. Besides that, thank you guys so much for watching, and peace.